Moishe wakes up and begrudgingly is dragging his feet while walking to a synagogue. There, he's forcing himself to read all the prayers. And then, with the feelings of resentment, he sits down to listen to the rabbi's Torah class. At the same time, David jumps out of his bed because he cannot wait to go to a synagogue. There, he reads all the prayers with devotion. And then, he's the first one to sit down at the class with the rabbi. Who would you call more religious, more pious, Moishe or David? A neighbor knocks on Moishe's door. He needs something from me again, sighs Moishe. He opens the door and manages to hide that he is annoyed. He does what he is asked and even forces himself to smile in the process, but he really doesn't want to do it. David gets a knock on his door. My neighbor needs a lot of help. It must be him. Of course, I will gladly do it, he thinks. When hearing the neighbor's request, David is sincerely happy to help him. Who would you call a kinder person, Moishe or David? Of course, David. Moishe does all the right things, but without enthusiasm and without sincerity. He reads the prayers without any feelings, just doing lip service. He's a hypocrite. When he smiles at his neighbor, he is just putting it on. But David, he is sincerely pious and he is really kind. But things might not be so simple. Why does David run to a synagogue or to help his neighbor? Because he wants to do it. To whom does David obey? His desires. David prays because he wants to, but Moishe prays because God said to do so. David helps his neighbor because he wants to, but Moishe because this is the right thing to do. Do we want people to be guided by their emotions or by what is right? Do we want people around us to behave however they want, or do we want them to be guided by their principles? But on the other hand, if I keep forcing myself to do what I'm supposed to against my will, I will eventually snap. People cannot live like this. And the lack of my sincerity in my behavior will eventually show. So what should we do? Judaism teaches that we cannot use our emotions or our logic in determining what to do. Our desires are not always good, and human logic can be wrong or even cruel. One person's logic proves one thing, and another person's logic proves the opposite. Go figure, who is right? In our behavior, we must obey only the laws that are given from above. But at the same time, we must work on our emotions and our mind to understand and want to follow these laws. Logic can justify anything. By studying the Torah, we train our minds to think in a moral and godly way. Hasidic tradition teaches us how to influence our feelings so we would want to do the right things. We must work on our logic and on our emotions, but we must never rely on them for guidance. So, it turns out that it is better to be like Moishe than like David. Because David has ulterior motives, his desires, and Moishe does things only because God said so. But what should I do if I am David? I want to help my neighbor, and I want to go to a synagogue. The way it usually works We start by doing the things we need to do regardless of our desires or our understanding. And simultaneously we work on ourselves to want and to understand why it is right. And when our feelings and our mind catch up with our actions, we need to move forward. We need to find new mitzvahs which we know we should do, but we are not doing yet. And again, work on our inner world to catch up with our actions. This is the idea of constant growth, according to Judaism. So do mitzvahs even if you are doing them without any feeling. But if you don't want to be a hypocrite, then simultaneously work on your feelings. And by the way, the very fact that you are doing these mitzvahs will also help you to want to do them.